do you forgive? That was the question I asked myself. How do you forgive something that happened to you as a child, that everything was taken away from you?
You don't do it without being vulnerable, without relating with each other on real practical things. And some things will be harder than others.
We have dealt with a lot of experiences. We had to wrestle with some of those issues.
The word is out about residential school. And the story is about the struggle, a story of tough times, and a story of perseverance, a story of working through all of that. And the story is about not what happens to us, and how we choose to respond.
I was born in Horn River. As a child, I know that I was happy there with my parents. And my dad moved here to Fort Providence. And I remember that I had a rabbit, kittens, puppies. I think I was a very happy child growing up with my parents, loving me, spoiling me.
I grew up on the land. My parents lived in Red Knife. We did all our seasonal activities from there till I was 5 years old.
We didn't have no electricity and didn't have running water. We grew up like living in a bush. I grew up in an old log house. We had to haul water and gather firewood and hunting and fishing with our older brothers and uncles.
My parents were really loving, and then they had traditional food. When I was growing up, we always had food. My dad is a hunter, trapper, and a fisher. Whenever there was a break from school, he took us out in the land.
The Dene and Inuit people and Métis people are people of the land, and they're very healthy. They do well when they're on the land. I think, frankly, we all do as well, and I think we have a lot to learn from these Aboriginal communities about this wisdom.
When kids are on the land, they know that being on the land, there's happiness. That's what was taught through the ages. There's no judgment. Being on the land is a happy time.
I think my dad had a very, very hard life, but he was always happy. Whatever that has to be done out on the land, he did it.
In the old days, people were very strong in their faith because life was pretty tough. And word of mouth and prayer, especially the rosary, was very important to them.
One thing I love about it was that every Sunday we'll go to church, because my dad was very, very devoted to God. He was also in a residential school. My dad had pain, but he always covered it with happiness. That was his way of life, is to be happy. Yeah, he did a lot of things for the mission, and he helped it build that church, that big church outside there. but he never used awful words towards the mission. You know, he took it as it is, and he bared all the things that happened to him. I'm proud of my dad. I love my dad. I adore my dad.
The schools were established, if you read the documents from Bishop Grandin in 1860, 61, he wrote a letter to the Grey Nuns of Montreal, and he said, would you come north, because we have many orphans. It was a question of health, question of education, question of faith. These are the three main factors that encouraged the missionaries to establish mission schools.
So when the government got involved and set up the residential schools and funded the whole project, it was obviously very political, and it became really a manifestation of the generic racism that was running through society, and that the people looked down on the Aboriginal peoples as an inferior culture. Our culture is really based on relationship. Our whole Dene language from this area is based on relationships. It's like a spiritual language, just because it does deal with relationships amongst people and amongst Mother Nature, the sky, the sun, and the animals.
My experience here in the north, in the diocese, is that first of all, the Dene people and the Inuit people and the Métis people are an open people. They share from their heart, and they relate their life to the land in a refreshingly straightforward way.
Spirituality is very important to our children, especially Aboriginal people and their families, and we see it in their children. Even though they may not have been exposed to much of the Catholic traditions, they are drawn to it.
I went to school here, to the mission, Sacred Heart Mission here, when I was 5 years old. And I attended the residential school for 13 years altogether. Being brought to an entirely foreign institution was an experience and a story all unto itself.
I went to school here in Providence Elizabeth Ward School for 3 years, but my dad took us out of school, so the others simply had no choice but to take me out of where we were living. So they picked us up and they sent me to residential school in Fort Simpson. They didn't care what age they took us at that time.
Some parents they realized that without an education, a basic education, their children will not go anywhere in the future society, the society of tomorrow.
I go back to my early days of growing up. I was a sick little boy, spent about 2.5 years in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, at the hospital there, sick with TB and spinal meningitis. And then not long after that, into residential school. So I really had not much of an opportunity to really get to know my parents all that well. And I was in the residential school for 6 years.
And I stayed in the residential school there for 12 years. 12 years, I believe. And then La Pointe Hall, five years.
It was really a negative experience. It wasn't really I can't, it's just like a dark moment in my life, like a dream, where it was really cold and I cried for my parents.
I understand the difficulty of the children. They were out on the land as free as birds, playing outside. Children are children. You bring them into an institution between four walls, you know, and organized by the clock. Imagine the trauma of those children coming into such institutions.
And when I got there, I didn't know what to expect. The only language I knew was my own language. Nothing else I knew. I only talked Slavey. So when I got there, I talked to my friends, my cousins that were there with us in Slavey, what's going to happen to us. I think I was very devastated because I cried and cried and cried. I want to go home. I want to go home to my dad and my mom, like, you know. I want to go where I'm loved. I don't want to be here, like, you know. Well, the first day you get there, the nuns, they undressed us, took all that stuff that we had on. And I had a moccasin wraparound. That's what I grew up with. That's what I went there with. And that's what they took away from me.
We were in not a very good way. A lot of us lost our culture. A lot of us lost our beliefs. The families were scattered. There was no bonding. And in those days too, the primary language was French, and I spoke only Dene. So there was a lot of issues there.
Now you had some Slavey people, you had some Dog Rib people, or Quinchon people, you had Chipewyan people, you even had Inuit people from the coast coming to Fort Providence. Which language are you going to speak, to teach? So up to 1950, 55, after the Second World War, the teaching was in French because those are the books they had.
I did go through like a bit of difficulty, but you were forced to endure those. And then you had also a lot of physical pain that was inflicted on you for speaking your language.
So I went there and they talked in English and I didn't understand a word they were saying. And we used to talk in Slavey, and at one time I was looking in the mirror at myself in that washroom, and my cousin was next to me. We were talking in Slavey. And I was talking to her, like, you know, I want to go home. And her too, she said, yeah. Like I was saying, that you can say. And she said, see, she mean too. I was so happy to talk that Slavey. Out of nowhere, this nun came and just whacked me right in the mouth. Like, you know, I tasted blood. And she was saying, no, you don't talk in your language. But then the nun came and took the both of us in the washroom and washed her mouth with soap. I got so afraid. I was so scared, and my little cousin there, she ran out of that washroom, and they grabbed her by the hair and they put her up beside me. This is not even a month that I was in that residential school. I had to go to bed without supper. The next day, she called us about 6:30 in the morning. We had to kneel on the floor and pray for talking our language. At 7 o'clock, they told us to go to the chapel, so we went to the chapel there. The nun told us that we gotta confess. Confess what? I didn't do nothing wrong. I don't know how to sing at that time. I've been gone for so long, and I started to talk English better, but I still wanted to talk my language. I was not allowed to talk my language. And my cousins, the boys, we cannot look at our cousin. We cannot talk to our cousin. Because if we do, we're sinners. That they'll take us out of the line and put us back in our room. So, and the nun is way up in the front watching.
Usually, you spend 10 months of each year in residential school, and then you spend 2 months during the summer with your own parents.
So I went home that summer, and I didn't even know how to talk my language because my mom didn't talk English. And I didn't want to eat the food that I used to eat. I used to eat fish. I didn't want to eat fish. I'll get sick.
My language, I never really lost it. Basically because it was still a matter of survival with our parents. We had to know the language in order to communicate with our own parents. It was really important because they never spoke English.
Okay, aber den hatte Kübels Kapschantab aus der Zukunft.
근데 가다 큰 것도 있지. 그들에 살아고 죽은 제일 사성들.
He's talking about when the first missionaries came, how it came to be for Providence. And it's just like I was so ashamed of the way I was brought up because they took that away from me. They took away my language. They took away my moccasins. And whatever I was there with, they took that away from me. Most important thing they took away from me is my language and my love for my people and for my church and for my Jesus. When I come home, I found my parents different. I didn't see them as my parents because they took that responsibility away from my parents. And when they see me, they were crying, they were drunk, and I didn't really know what it was like for them to take that responsibility away. So they learn how to do alcohol.
If I go back to my residential school experience, I talk about the 3 gifts that I took from that experience. One of the gifts was, first of all, it taught me discipline, how to take orders, and gave me boundaries, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. The second gift that it gave me, it taught me how to pray. No doubt about that, I learned how to pray. Number 3, it was learning how to survive outside of my family at a very young age. And those 3 gifts I still take with me today. All the rest, I've decided to put further behind me. And I'm able now to free myself to carry a different kind of load and a lighter load too. Not so many heavy things to carry with me.
The Oblates established a residence called Grandin College in 1960. They selected the 12 most probable candidates to the priesthood among the native people. So the oblates checked with all the missions. Do you have a candidate in your village, in your community, who is good at school work, who has a good life, good family, would like to establish a small seminary? So they chose 12, like the 12 apostles.
Every spring, the mission boat comes down the river and the bishop lands here. And you're pointed out, and if the bishop touches you on top of the head, then you are chosen. September, you'll go. You're called to go to Grandin College.
That seminary existed, was in operation till 1985, for 25 years.
Grandin College was supposed to be a stepping stone to going to a seminary or a college or something.
We never got a vocation. We got lots of politicians, though. Most of the politicians of the North are from our college. That was the idea, that to try to have vocations, to establish a native church. That's the role of the church, to form leaders. So we developed the leadership of the North at Grandin College.
When I went to residential school, my parents told me to respect the people who's teaching the faith.
Where we kind of have to accept everything without question and walking that fine line so that we're not rejected. It's all about trying to be accepted.
I did as best as I can to do what I was taught. So, and at one time, I didn't do anything wrong, but the nun told me that I had to go see a priest. So I did. There, everything happened. I didn't know what the priest was doing to me, but it's just like I was thinking that, maybe he lost me. I don't know. First that he was touching me here and there, but I didn't know what he was doing. I was so numb because I'd never been touched like that as a girl. I don't know how long I stayed there, and then finally I got up and I told him, I want to go. He set me right back down and said, I'm not done. When they touch you, you know that you don't feel it because you're numb. In the eyes, to them, I was a nothing. They used me as a sex object. But anyway, he let me go, and there's a few girls there out there waiting, and they didn't say nothing to me. I didn't say nothing to them. I didn't look at them. I had so much anger and hate that I never knew in my childhood. All that stuff I didn't know about was being brought to me by the nuns that are supposed to be Christians and believe in God and Jesus. And even a nun sexually abused me. Because of what the priest was doing, I was trying to confront her. And she slapped me in the face and she told me, you're lying. You girls are all lying about everything.
the challenges was, I guess, in Canadian society and in the Native communities, there was a lot of denial that anything happened.
It was going on and on and on and on. Like, you know, it was so terrible. I don't remember. I don't think I was a happy child there. Even Christmas was a dull day. I thought as you grow up, you're supposed to keep your body till you get married. But that all changed. So we learn not to cry. We learn not to feel. We learn to keep to ourselves. So all these things that's happening around us, we have to log it up.
In those days, people didn't talk about it because they thought they were the only ones, and they would be looked at as being the liars, because, hey, you don't accuse a priest or a person of doing that, you know.
They took everything away from me, being in a residential school. Everything away from me. What more can they do to me? They might as well just kill me.
The people who have harmed children in any way through negligence, through abuse, sexual abuse, whether they be priests, sisters, brothers, religious of any kind, or lay people, teachers, anyone in charge of young people, children, they don't have the right to harm them. No one has that right. Jesus Christ said that anyone who harms the least of these children of mine, better for them that they have a millstone tied around their neck and be thrown into the sea. That's how Jesus felt about it.
On my 13th birthday, I was out of residential school. Right about the time my mom and dad were breaking up, with the residential school still fresh in my mind, and this new freedom that I thought I had, I quickly went into the addiction of alcohol. I became a little rebel, I guess would be the best word to put it, and a very unhappy person, ungrateful for many, many things. And at the ripe old age of 29, I can tell you right now that that I was struggling with alcoholism, and if I didn't do something about it, that I would no longer be on this earth.
I learned to keep silent, and then I start drinking, and then I start using solvent abuse. I start sniffing gas and glue, and then I went into alcohol, and I start using alcohol to kill my pain. It got worse. From what little control I had over my life, it got worse with alcohol. And then I got gang raped twice in the community because I was under the influence, and then people took advantage of me. And when I was really young, same thing happened in the community. Somebody took advantage of me sexually. I realized that by drinking, I had no control over my life.
When I was 13, I learned to taste alcohol. I learned to drink it, and I learned to swear. I learned to do all kinds of stuff I wasn't taught to do. I did a lot of wrong things in my life because of what happened to me. As I've been a drunk parent, raising up my kids the best that I can because I didn't have no mom to tell me to do this and do that. This is how you look at it. I did what I can to survive and to grow up my kids, as well as being drunk. That's the only thing I knew. And then I learned to smoke marijuana.
When you're lost, you go and do your own thing. And not knowing God, you get into a lot of trouble and you do things that you don't want to do.
So I had to make a decision. The decision came that I had to learn to love myself, to want something better. So I decided that sitting in a drunk tank and listening to the words that the nuns had told me that I wasn't going to succeed in life. And I thought to myself, you know, I'm living their prophecy. That from this day forward, that I'm going to change my way and I'm going to prove them wrong. So what I had to do is I had to get down on my knees, ask for something better from a higher power, whom I choose to call my God of my understanding. And I said, look, you know, can I give you back the remote control? Because I took control of my whole life and what a mess I made.
I realized that if I was not controlling myself and under the influence, it's going to happen again. It really, really scared me, so I turned my life around. When I was about 23, I slowed down. And then when I had my second child, I completely stopped and I relapsed again. And then I stopped again. Then I've been sober since then.
About the second year after my sobriety, I was going to a church, but I wasn't feeling nothing like I used to as a child. I felt empty. I felt lost. I didn't know where I belonged anymore. I didn't have no support from the community. Like, they asked me if I wanted to drink. I said no. No, I learned to fight it. I learned to deal with it day by day, and I pray my rosaries every day. I tell Heavenly Father, please let me learn to say no to alcohol. So I learned to say no.
Well, I realized that what I couldn't forgive is what I gave my power to. I had to learn to take my power back from the power of addiction, of alcohol for me, and to be able to love my wife, my children, as I should. And it took me a long time because when I first sobered up, I was poor me, poor me, poor me, I'm an alcoholic, poor me, you know, and somebody said, poor me, poor me, pour me another one. And that scared me. It scared the daylights out of me. I've had some really, really good people ahead of me that are from my family. And I needed to see the goodness in them. It's so easy to see the negative. But when you start to learn to live positive, it's easier to see the positive. And that's what we need to do. It's not what happens to us, is how we choose to respond. If we respond in a good way, goodness follows goodness.
To begin the healing from whatever happened, experience, it was in the mission, we needed to create an awareness. We asked the assembly, basically asking the elders, we've got this idea here, there's some funding available. Can we start working on the residential school issue? And there was a few mumblings. And then one elder piped up and said, hey, you can't do that. The people that talk about residential school, they talk against God. We don't want you guys to talk against God. They scolded us. And then a couple of years later, we kept on having this idea. We need to deal with the impact of residential school. And somebody suggested, well, if we can get a simple definition of healing and translate it to the elders, maybe they'll give us the go-ahead. So we went to the assembly again. There must be 400, maybe 500 people. And we gave a presentation again, this time being very careful, being very respectful. Some of us shared from the heart in that we wanted to heal. And we wanted the rest of the people to begin healing. And after about 4 of us spoke, they took a break, and then the elders came back and they said, yes, go ahead on the residential school healing project. And lo and behold, it ended up, I worked on that project for 9 years. That was the most exciting part of my life, I think.
For a long, long time I saw where people were holding things in and were carrying this secret, carrying this hurt and this pain, and preventing us from being the real people we need to be.
I went to Ottawa, and when they had the closing ceremony for the Truth and Reconciliation event, I represented the leaders. It was a wonderful experience because in the Truth and Reconciliation, the theme was like to me that we need to move forward together to embrace our new life, to leave everything behind, but still to heal from it. That we need to work together hand in hand with everybody, the people like the churches that hurt the people in the residential school, but we need to forgive and we need to embrace our life, to move forward with our lives so that we can live our life away from it and start anew.
The Truth and Reconciliation process has been a journey, and that journey continues. We've reached a benchmark, which I would call the conclusion of the TRC process, which included a number of important calls to action that call Canadians, including and especially non-Aboriginal Canadians, to an awareness and a journey together, and that includes the church. There is a dialogue, there is a relationship that needs to continue to go on. To say that the TRC results in kind of, well, we've heard, we have the program or programs in place, we've been there, done that, we move on. No, I mean, there are certain outcomes that we need to achieve, and there are others that we will be achieving for a while.
took me a long time to deal with it. I had to battle with myself as well as the enemy. But I always believed in God, Jesus, that I know He will help me.
I understand, I've only been here 2.5 years, that there had been a lot of sharing and reflection on the experience of the residential school and legacy and what was all around it for them. And a lot of work, which is a real tribute to the previous leadership before me, Bishop Denny Croteau and then now Archbishop Murray Chatelain, done a lot of work in terms of healing and helping people, you know, go deeper on their journey, dealing with people who are in different places as they reflect on where they've come from, what they may be still dealing with, and what they need to confront.
So that's the principle of returning to spirit. Not blaming, but accepting and see what can I do with what has happened to me so that I can become a better person.
The genius, I understand, of the Return to Spirit program was the coming together of people who went to the schools, Aboriginal people, and those who worked in the school, people who were not Aboriginal, were of the church, to meet together and confront, to name, to laugh, to cry. I think there's probably a lot of crying and tears, as a basis to move forward together.
It's a 3-week affair. The first week is for victims. The second week is for those who were in charge of the schools, the staff, the personnel. And the third week is bringing those two groups together for reconciliation. Often they say, well, the church doesn't want to spend money. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've spent millions of dollars in training people in all kinds of ways in my time as a bishop. Trappers Lake has been the center of that training. So the church is willing to do whatever possible to help.
I went to Trappers Lake for the first time. All I was doing was looking for forgiveness. How do you love? How do you forgive? That's all I was looking for. There's a little chapel there. I sat there and I prayed for forgiveness. Teach me to forgive. Lead me. Nourish me. And teach me. So there, I learned to forgive, but I learned to forgive little by little.
Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
I used to be one of the people that had a lot of anger. I used to have a lot of anger because of the abuse that I had received in the residential school. But as part of my own recovery and healing from that experience and forgiveness, now when I go to church, I enjoy going to church. And even that whole process of forgiveness, that took about 3 or 4 years. But I was determined that I was gonna one day get to the place of forgiveness, and I did that.
What happened to me in the past has been, if you're in politics, you say like, that chapter is over. You know, I have to move on from here forward. You know, I accept the things for what they turned out to be, but I never ever give up the thought that one day we might become Indigenous again.
You know, I'm not perfect, but I'm still working on my spirituality, like with Catholic Church, and to heal that.
There's forgiveness on 3 levels. Forgiveness for hanging on to those old memories that were weighing me down. Forgiving myself for that and asking for forgiveness for holding that for so long. And forgiving the perpetrators, those people who have hurt me. And the third part was having those people that hurt me accept my forgiveness.
I know many times as a principal and as an educator, I have to ask for forgiveness for the wrongs that have happened over time, because I see that that is a very important first step to, once again, building the relationship and the trust of people who've been traumatized and people who hold anger or are unsure about our relationship and why we want to support and help them. God continues to forgive us every day, and it's the same thing that we must do, is to talk about forgiveness and what does it look like and what does it mean. When a person is asking you to say you're sorry or to seek forgiveness for something that's happened in the past, even though you haven't been part of it, I think it honors them and recognizes them that somehow they have a hurt. We can't question the hurt, but it's our responsibility to help the hurt leave.
All we're doing is just sharing our stories. That's all. Just naturally, healing happens whenever people come together and they share. Some people cry a little bit, and then in the evening we'll have a good supper, gather again, and maybe we'll have a dance, and then the next morning maybe we'll share some more. Maybe somebody else will really tell a touching story, and a lot of us would bring us to tears. And so we started doing those gatherings, and they were really, really effective in healing, beginning the healing.
I got a chance to talk to other priests, what happened to me. What happened to me in that residential school. They were all there. I had this thing in my stomach. I don't know what it was, but it was just like, it was just ripping me. I don't know if it was God talking to me, like, you know. I just felt like I wanted to just get up and, you know, do something, but I couldn't. I just, they're all talking one by one. So when it came my turn, I got up and that's it. I forgive out of the blue. I forgive all the missionaries. I forgive all the priests, all the nuns. And whoever hurt me, I forgive. I learned to accept it, and I learned to forgive, and I learned to love them because of my God that taught me how to love and how to share my feelings.
Christ never intended for any of his ministers or representatives on earth to harm children in any way. And we're all children of God. But sometimes people do fall prey to their own dark side, if you will, their own ego, their own self-interest and selfishness. And they do harm people. And they do abuse children. The antidote to that is love.
confronted the priests. There was a group of them, the bishop. I said, we were in a workshop in Yellowknife, and they said, okay, well, what more do you natives want? You know, what do you want? So I piped up and said, we natives of the North, we are well on our way to healing. And I said, shouldn't the church be healing too?
So what does it mean for the church to heal, especially in the North? If this is an Aboriginal church, how do we move forward together in terms of learning about how to distinguish the features of maybe what came with the early missionary culture and what's good of that, and then in the moving forward together, how do the local people take and participate and take ownership of that life, mission, and ministry of the Lord and Savior that is so integral to the mission of the church in the world.
But now, the Great Spirit, the third person of the Godhead, we get ready to celebrate in the life of our church.
So what the church is doing and what we're doing in our Catholic school system is to give children the tools to say, school can be a happy time. We can't hide the past, because that's also a form of healing. You know, children have a sense that some wrong has been done. And we need to tell them it's okay to ask questions, to investigate it, to make up their own minds, but not to hide the truth, to open it up. And school and the church is doing that now. They're saying, let's talk about it. And yes, it's difficult. But if we do that also in an educational way, where it's done with safety, then I think we're going to have future generations where they will be able to understand it and move forward. And that is also a form of healing.
The journey is very important. We can't rush it. There are some principles of that journey. Respect, listening, compassion for each other. A lot of listening, I think, is really important. There's a lot for the Aboriginal people here in their story, in their retelling, recalling, and then their journey to realizing how is the Creator blessing them, calling them to move forward as they look to be free of what they need to be free of so that they can confront the opportunity of life. And isn't that ultimately the common journey for us all? So we have a lot to learn from the Aboriginal people here, and I think we have a lot to learn together.
A lot of us needed to remind each other, whatever happened in the past, you can work on it, but it's only God that can change it.
I have a lot of hope that it's going to get better with the praise and grace of God. I believe that He can answer our prayer to make our community a better place and a safe place to live. Today, I'm a strong person. Jesus made me a strong person. I believe in His name. I believe in His word. I believe that He is life forever and forever.
When He touches your heart, He takes your worry or your problems, because knowing that you totally trust in Him, that He will take everything away from you, the pain, the suffering, being poor. Like, He just turns everything around, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, the blessing is there, and you just didn't know it.
I, as a Catholic, I believe in the power of forgiveness. I believe that Jesus died for the forgiveness of sins. And if I believe that, then why can't I do it? Why can't I forgive? Why can't I move forward? Why can't I be happy? I want to be happy. And the only way I can do that is to be able to not carry those things that weigh me down anymore.
I have faith, I have hope, I have everything I need now because of my God.